Hey, Luke fam, welcome to another episode of our mental wellness conversations. As many of you know, we're in the middle of a sermon series, Keep Your Head Up. And so we're going to be having a number of conversations. This is probably the final one, actually, trying to encourage and inspire you talking about mental wellness. First of all, though, let me also say I need a big favor from you. Make sure you like, subscribe, do all that good stuff so that you're sharing this with others. I promise you it's going to be impactful and you're going to want everybody else to know about what you heard and how it impacted you. All right. Well, tonight's conversation is about mental wellness and how it impacts the family. And real grateful that I got two incredible people, part of our family, Miss Kim Cox, Minister Kim Cox, and our own Deacon Andre Harris. Grateful for y'all joining us for this conversation.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So let's jump right in because we've already kind of been having a little conversation on the side, and some of these things have already started. So let's talk about, some of the challenges we face with caring for everybody else and sometimes not necessarily prioritizing our own mental health. So when you think of that, Kim, what does that mean for you in the necessity of prioritizing my mental health, even in the midst of a real busy family?
It's interesting because I think mental health, like everything else, is multifaceted. There are different parts of it that you can cover at different times. I don't know that it's all covered all the time. I think everybody should be a little crazy sometime or all the time. Everybody needs to be a little crazy.
Wait. When you say it, you mean
I
what?
mean, crazy.
Okay. All right. All right.
You got to be ready to be a little loose with it
Okay.
at times.
Okay.
You got to be ready. What do they say? Stay ready so you don't have
Stay
to
ready.
get
All
ready.
right. I got
right?
you.
Right.
Having said that, I had to learn how to lean on who I am as a woman first, because I'm a caregiver to my mother, who's 86. I have a 16-year-old daughter. I have a 32-year-old daughter. I have a husband. And all of those people need different things from me at different times.
Right.
And it was very easily becoming overwhelming, and I felt myself maybe drowning a little bit. But I had to get centered, and in doing that, what I did was come back to who I am as a woman and what that requires. Because even on the plane, they tell you, put your oxygen mask on first, right? Or because if you die, everybody's going to die. And so I had to lean back into what I needed as the priority, not as a priority. Who I am, what I needed, had to become the priority because I'd be no good to everybody else if I'm under the bed. And so once I leaned into that, I then had to really get centered because what I need now with all these different roles is different than what I needed 10 years ago. And when I feel like I'm off kilter, I shut down on them. I give them notice that I need a minute. And I shut down and I go away. Because if I'm at home saying I shut down, that means nothing. You're still going to be asking me where your socks are. You're still going to be asking me if I'm cooking liver because old people like liver.
Nobody eat no liver.
Old people eat liver.
All right.
Old people eat liver and onions.
With gravy.
So with gravy, exactly. So I shut down and I go away and I take a minute to not have to be needed. Because that's what pulls on you, the need that people have of you. And that's how I handle it.
You said something interesting, and I want the same question for you, Dre, but I wanna shift with what she said, because she said about how being different things, different people, different seasons of life, and it's constantly evolving. So you've gone through some seasonal evolution in your own life from, child leaving home and then retiring and then all those different changes and prioritizing your mental health. What does that mean for you?
Wow, I must admit, I am fairly new to this mental health journey. When I say fairly new, I would say I'm about 2.5 years in. And but prior to that, there was no prioritization on my mental health. And that poses a challenge on a lot of things. If we're called as men to be the priests and the providers and the protectors of our home, then it's a necessity that we have our stuff together. So it wasn't until about 2.5 years ago that I even began to take this journey seriously, so that I could be my whole self in order to be as effective as possible within my family, to care for my wife, to care for my daughter, and things of that nature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because the difference is that oftentimes statistics say that men don't necessarily seek out the type of mental wellness strategy and structure that they need because we don't like to talk about certain things.
And it's crazy you mentioned that because, again, prior to this journey, and I think most men struggle with this, we internalize things. And when we internalize things, pressure builds and things, and we don't have the ability to react or act in the appropriate manner for the most times once we internalize those things. So when you begin to deal with that mental health walk, or begin that mental health walk, it gives you the ability to start to process things in a very, very different manner. A very, very different manner.
Okay, so I see you want to jump in. Go ahead.
I think that we all carry trauma and dysfunction in
we
some
do.
form, right? But I think that women impose their stuff on themselves and men impose their stuff on other people.
Wow, say more.
When you say you internalize it, I do think that you don't talk about it. But just because you don't talk about it doesn't mean that you internalize it. Or we see it and it's out there. You
True,
might not be
different.
communicating it verbally, but it is being seen, it's being felt, it's being experienced. And so
The nonverbals, right?
nonverbals.
I would agree with you
Yeah.
100%.
So-
There's some verbal too, but for the most part, yeah.
So that is the truth. I know everybody's out there saying, amen. That is absolutely true. And we do not deny it. How much of a pressure is that for you when maybe men don't necessarily, kind of open up as much about it, and then you got to kind of see it and kind of sift through all that?
So this is like, well, yeah, this is relationship stuff, but these relationships are what carries the family in the house, the relationships between everybody in there, right? And so this might get some heat, some hot sauce, but I think that you have to learn how to manage your man, not manipulate him, but you got to learn how to manage him. And you are different versions of yourself depending on what's happening in your house. Now, that does not make you the sacrificial lamb by default.
Okay.
Like, I'm not supposed to just catch it all just because. But once you learn what's needed, it's like any other process. You put the process in place to make happen what needs to happen in your house, whether it be with him, your kids, because every kid is different too, and yourself. But if my husband, at certain times of the year, he's very intense.
Sure.
Right? And so we might get in the car to go to his job, and he might snap at me. And in my unsanctified mind, I'm speaking in tongues, right? Unsanctified tongues. But in my sanctified mind, I say a prayer and I look out the window. Because I know by the time we get there, the Holy Ghost is going to work on him and he's going to apologize and say, I'm sorry. And I could probably go get a purse or something the next week.
Boy, listen, it is getting so hot in the comments. I know this for sure. Already, it is getting hot in these comments. Y'all keep talking to us. All right. So Dre, when you hear that, and I don't want us to get into the too hard of an exchange.
I'm not going to go back and forth with Kim. But what I will say this, that to your point, I think that's why it's really, really important when we think about mental health is to, at some point within the family dynamic, everyone gets involved.
Yep.
Because if I am the only one doing the work and the other family members are not, then you're going to always,
That's good.
it's my belief, you're going to always have a certain level of imbalance, if you would. You're going to have to work harder. You're going to have to take some lumps.
Absolutely.
A little bit longer. But when we bring everybody into the fold as a collective within the family, we can prosper a whole lot better, perhaps a whole lot quicker in our journey on this mental health thing.
So let me double click right there, because there are challenges to everybody coming in the fold and having this conversation. And I want you to hear in response to this, that a part of that getting us all together, is we know that there's going to be some anxiety about what do we have to address, and what's going to come up in the conversation that maybe I don't know that I'm ready to address or to talk about. So does that play a role in us really all kind of doing the necessary work? Because sometimes there may be, guarantee that somebody wants to avoid it, and let's see if we just kind of push it to the back. And when I say push it, I mean collectively. I mean collectively talking and working and the whole dynamic of this goal to develop.
I think it's a process, right? So when you jump into something like that, and I'll just use me as an example. When I started my journey, I have a completely separate counselor that I utilize. My wife, in her journey, she has a completely separate counselor. Just by default, my daughter and I, we've used the same counselor. But what I mean by that is we didn't all jump in and say, okay, one day, let's all go. There's perspective that has been gathered by the person that's helping you navigate life ahead of time. Mm-hmm. So me being vulnerable to my counselor, she already knows what my trigger points are, things of that nature, if we're going to be effective. And let's be real, I will say this about counseling as well. You cannot go into counseling with a limited perspective, or not necessarily limited perspective, but with I'm only going to share what I want to share. You know what I mean? But you can internalize the really, really heavy stuff. When you get there, you have to realize that that's my safe place, and I'm able to dump. I'm going to get it out, and in the end, that's going to be help the whole family collective in the long run. And your hope and your prayer is that when your family, as they start their journey, they do the same thing. So when it's time to come together, now we all know what we're going into.
I think that
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I think it goes back to what you said about everybody doing the work.
Doing the work.
The willingness to do the work comes with the readiness to start the journey, right?
Oh, deep.
And so when you're ready to start the journey, then you're willing to put in the effort and the energy required, because I think counseling and mental health is very similar to the Holy Spirit and going to church. It's not about feeling better, it's about being better and getting better. And I think sometimes we go to counseling, and once we get it out and we feel better, we think we can punctuate it at that point. When in essence, no, in reality, that's just the beginning. You've just scratched the surface.
Absolutely.
You're feeling better, but there's work that has to be done to ensure that you're applying the newness of what the revelation is about yourself to your life. And I think I absolutely agree with you that everybody's got to be willing to do the work, whether it is a family dynamic, a husband and wife, a wife and daughter, a mother and daughter.
Yes.
Because like I said, I take care of my mother. And so the dynamic now is that the child has become the parent.
Absolutely. I've lived it.
And so having said that, and at 86, who you are is basically who you're going to be until you go on the glory. And so there is some stress and tension there at times, but just like wives have to do their husbands, husbands have to do their wives, parents have to do their children. I give my mother the space and grace to be who she needs to be, to feel what she needs to feel, and then I may come back around or I may not, because it's not all about winning. It's about being able to thrive together.
Now, there is some winning to it.
Well, when you thrive together, it is a
Right,
win.
yeah. No, I'm talking about Mike Dixon. Go get the song. Winning.
See? Oh, my gosh.
By that little choir. Okay, all right,
Better get used to telling me
I know.
congratulations.
Yeah, winning by the Luke Choir. Download it today. Listen, so let's shift this a little bit, because here's this one big one. I know for me as I'm thinking about it, there's this kind of unspoken pressure that all of us carry especially in the faith community, that there's this need to have to be okay, but you're not okay. So how do you carry that pressure right there? Because there are times where you think, how you doing? I'm great, but you're really not, because you're trying to wrestle with that pressure of I'm doing it for them.
That's deep, man. Unspoken pressures. I think one of those unspoken pressures that comes to mind for me is the burden of leadership. We talk about the faith community, the burden of leadership. Whether you're a pastor, minister, deacons, or whatever the case may be, there is a significant burden that, and I would even say unspoken, that your life has to be exemplary. When folks in your congregation look at you, the expectation is, or the unspoken expectation is that you're perfect. You're not allowed to have struggles behind the scenes.
But you're human.
But you're human. Exactly, but you're human.
And they need that humanity in order for you to be effective in what you do.
Absolutely. But on the flip side of that, another one of those pressures is judgment, and that follows that. So if in fact you choose to be a little bit vulnerable about what you're going through, church folks sometimes
So careful.
they have the ability to put that judgment on you. Like, how dare you?
It's a fine line.
It's a very fine line. How dare you?
That's why community is important. You know, your tribe, because everywhere you're assembled is not where you're assigned, right?
Correct.
And so I think you got to figure out who you're assigned to and who's assigned to you to allow transparency to that extent. Because again, like I said, I think all of it is multifaceted. There are different levels of transparency. There are different levels of vulnerability, you know, and I think that when you're able to be your full transparent self, that's a sacred space. It's a sacred space. And I feel like it's really, people are called to each other for that space specifically. What you said about humanity, I think that's a huge thing. I say this all the time in my parenting walk, that I show my children my humanity so they're not afraid to show me theirs. So I show my mom even now, because that generation dealt a lot with perception and what people thought and how things looked. And so I grew up with that cloud over my head, believing that things had to look a certain way, even if they weren't. And it was just too much pressure. I was falling apart, but, you know, a pretty pretender. And when I got to a place where I felt like I couldn't see, I couldn't think, I was just broken is what I was. I when I put myself back together, when the Lord, you know, did me a Humpty Dumpty, I don't know if I may even be too transparent.
Okay. So I want to walk there for a minute. Let's stop right there for a minute, because there is this whole struggle that we deal with, especially in the Black community, you know, the stigmatism that comes with our mental health challenges and our journey towards mental wellness, that, you know, there's this kind of thing, don't talk about it, put it, you know, stuff it somewhere. So you grow up in that type of model, and you don't let people in, especially men. You just kind of put that shield and armor up, and no, I'm not even going to give you a chance to see this. So, but the importance of unveiling it and working through it is what you said is so necessary for the people you serve and love, is the willingness to deal with it. So let's talk, Kim and Andre, about a couple points that you might think are important in putting a process together to come from behind the veil, if you will, to move from pretending to a process of healing, growth, which means I got to show you something. I got to let you know this is what's happening.
Pastor, don't you think, I mean, it's harder, it's easier said than done.
It is.
It is.
But everything that really our walk is rooted in is about love, right? And so I don't know if the church as a whole, universal, talks a lot about love and how you get past transgressions and, you know, hypersensitivity and those kinds of things, so that people can start trusting again that it's okay to show yourself, to allow your skin to be seen and not always underneath the clothes, you know, because that's to be able to trust somebody, because you can't be scared and trust at the same time.
That's true.
Right? And so once you feel comfortable, and I think the Luke, quite honestly, does a relatively good job if you are active.
Say that again.
Active part of the community.
If you're active
in the community.
in the community, because the church is a community.
Right.
You know, the church is a community. And so if you're active in the community, then you give yourself an opportunity to feel different spaces in the community and then find a place of comfort. It's harder if you're not active. Now, there are times where maybe somebody will see you and pull you in, but the willingness to want to feel has got to be there first.
Okay.
And I think it's important also, to piggyback on that, is to make sure that churches as a whole, we are creating environments that cultivate a space of safety.
Absolutely.
When I say safety, meaning this space, I am safe that I can come here and pour out my all without having to come in and pretend that I'm okay. I think cultivating those spaces within the church, and I think, again, like you, I think we do well with that at the Loop, but cultivating those spaces where people feel safe and comfortable and not judged that they may be spiritually broken or they may not always have it together.
But
That's
where do you
necessary.
put it? Like, where do you put it? If you are broken, where do you put
Sure.
it? When you come to church for service on Sunday, where do you put your brokenness?
All right, great point. So, because I think that that's a critical question everybody's asking, let me pause here and just say this. For many who say, maybe you're saying I'm new to the Loop, and this conversation is kind of in native language, people who've been here. I want you to know that there's no perfect place. You're not going to find it. It does not exist. If you ever do, leave, because you're going to mess it up. But here's what I would say, though, is that we do try to be a place that really kind of models the development and work that it takes to grow strong community. And sometimes we can bring our own types of ideals about how people are going to handle us to where we end up disqualifying what they are actually going to offer us that's going to be beneficial. So keep your mind open, heart open wide, and I think you're going to find community here at the Loop. Now, let's talk about this, because we got to provide a safe place, a safe space to be that. And there is that work that has to happen. What we often want is for others to provide what they would want from us. So if I'm handling you, then and I know that a part of my growth and development is tied to your being able to progress with your mental wellness, then I got to be willing to make the sacrifice to say, let me do what I can to make it safe for you to be that. That may mean I've got to lean in. I've got to learn to listen. I've got to be actively aware of my judgmentalism as I'm hearing you. I've got to be prayerful that, God, you'll clamp my tongue if there's anything I'm thinking of saying I shouldn't say. And how do I model a sense of openness so this person, as they're talking, they're making the decision, I can keep going, I can keep going. So here's what I'm really thinking. Here's what I'm really feeling. How do we do that? Is that a possibility?
How do we model
And I hope I'm not offering more of a statement than I am a question, but I want us to engage in that, because I think everybody wants that.
I think that, you know how some of us, you meet people and they just tell you all their business.
Sure.
And I think when you're not concentrating on presenting, you're just concentrating on being a person. It makes it very easy for people to connect, because you meet people all the time, but you don't always connect. And I think when people see an authenticity, whether it be in the church or the person, the leadership, they find a connection to that. I'm never really trying to, when I'm in the situation, like you just said, I'm meeting somebody maybe for the first time at church, or I'm talking to them, because I say hi to everybody. I'm never trying to I'm never trying to present the very best part of myself. What I'm trying to present is the space that is comfortable. And I'm not comfortable with all parts of myself.
Right.
But I am trying to give them the part that I am comfortable with. And if that's I'm crying in that moment, that's what you get. I'm talking to you and I'm crying. If it is I'm shouting, I'm laughing, I'm telling a joke, I'm being serious about the word, I'm trying to really work through the good, bad, and the ugly of who I am in the moment with you so that you can see I'm reaching for you. I'm not just standing here wanting you to come to me. I'm reaching for you so we can meet. And I think, again, the church as a community does a good job of not just standing here and saying, come, we're reaching. And the people are feeling the pull of it, and so they come in.
It just got hot again in the chat
It did.
because somebody's saying that sounds great in theory, but that's not necessarily the church.
Okay, well, the church are the people, so that means that as a people, we're not doing that if that's what they see. And
I
that goes back to
agree,
your
and I
question.
absolutely, I'm glad you said it because I think sometimes we think, it's so easy to say they're not doing this and they're not doing that, and that's why I don't go to church. I hear that so much on social media stuff, and I'm like, but it's us. Why would you're talking about yourself? Because we're the body. So part of my health is determined by how healthy you are.
Absolutely.
If there's something that's challenging you, I've got to see myself included in that
In your
struggle.
challenge, right? I think it's a sense of vulnerability also on both sides of the one that wants to receive versus the leader that may be giving, or the individual that may be giving or pouring into one another, into another person. You have to be vulnerable. You have to be willing to be vulnerable. That takes a little time, right? You're not going to get there overnight, but I can visualize, for instance, our men's group. Man, there is a level of vulnerability that is shared amongst those men, in the moment that is unreal. I'm talking about emotions. I'm talking about tears. I'm talking about life's challenges, and I'm talking about real life challenges. I mean, that level of vulnerability is unreal, but it's a process. We didn't get there overnight. A first-time visitor in one of those meetings might not be able to pour out, or open their hearts up and to receive what's going on in that moment. But as you continually thrust yourself into what's going on within the church, find those small groups, if you would, that are like-minded with what you have going on, and then be able to just jump in there and trust God that as I jump in, somebody's going to be here to assist me. Somebody may be walking the same walk that I am walking, and they're able to pour into me in ways that I would have never even thought of.
But
Go ahead.
There's no buts.
how? See, I took away the but.
Okay.
How do I know that you're walking the same walk or you've walked the same walk unless I come to the men's group?
You got to come. Yeah.
You have to.
Yeah.
So if it's my first time at the church or my second time where I've joined it, I'm just kind of looking around, how do I connect that way?
That's a great question because that's what we really are trying to do when we talk about joining a ministry. It really is. It's not about we need somebody to do this or to do that. It's about you finding community. That's why when you hear that, you got to change how you're processing it. When you hear us say join a ministry, find something, we're really saying find a small group, a community where you can develop accountability. And once you develop that, it makes it easier to become more and more vulnerable. So I think the church does have a lot of work still to do on developing safe spaces and places. So I want to shift the conversation as we turn the corner, that you both have children in different seasons of their life. And for our children from, their childhood, parentally, you're always trying to model this sense of mental wellness. You're always trying to, it's good. Maybe you're frantic inside, but you're modeling calm. How do you do that when you got your own struggles behind the scenes?
Oh, man.
You got your own issues that they don't know about. You can't, you can't put on them, no matter where they are in their particular life journey.
I think for me, and I love this question because I am in a different space now as to where I was, say, 10 years ago when my daughter was perhaps in college or whatnot. I have a young adult now. So my approach to this and most things, especially within my family dynamic right now, is full transparency. I am an open book when it comes to especially with my child, when it comes to what my struggles are, how I choose to manage those struggles, and even when I'm walking through the valley, being able to share what my outcome is when I get on the other side of that valley is so important. But I will say this, there's a certain level of maturity that needs to be in place with that child in order for you to be able to share and for them to be able to receive as well. Because I will say this, in my journey, being able to transparently and vulnerably share with my child in this process, I found that your children can oftentimes be your best counselors. Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah, I think they're brought here to teach us too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they're brought here to teach us too. And I think because I have adult children and a child still in the house, again, it's a different version of myself because the different kids need different things from me right now. Both of them, well, my adult daughter tells me things, and we talk about things that are very relatable, and it's a very girlfriend conversation. My adult son tells me things that are cringeworthy, and I'm like, oh, like, oh my God, like I need you to get a wife. And then my 16-year-old is still being molded by her biggest influence group, which is your friends at that age, right? And so what I've learned to teach her is to lean into all of it. And when I say lean into all of it, there are times when you're sad, but your being sad is not the definition of your life in its entirety during that moment. I want you to be sad. I want you to cry. I also want you to know that you live a fantastic life and you're blessed, and you can be sad and feel blessed and still go to a great restaurant and clean up your room, right? All of those things can be true because more than one thing and more than one feeling and more than one circumstance can be happening at the same time. Lean into all of it. Just lean into it because I found with her specifically, and with me too, when I'm looking at more than just that thing, then that thing isn't as big as I thought it was. It is just a part of the pie. It is not the pie. At the end of the day, I'm the pie. And then what I experience is just that. It's what I experience. And I think that's just the application that works for everybody in my house. And all I have to offer is what I've learned from my own mistakes, right? From my own trials, from my own head bust. And so I give them that because that's the very best of me. The very best of me is not what I do really well. The very best of me is the stuff that I've learned from what I did wrong. And so I try to give that so that we can all maintain some sense of sanity because we're living in truth.
So I want to kind of as we begin to close here, we've unpacked a lot of stuff, and I hope it's just the beginning of more and more conversations like this. But somebody is saying y'all hit on all of this stuff. Y'all hit on things that are so important to me that I'm dealing with. You got 2 minutes with them. Because I heard somebody say to me once that, when you learn good strategies and you deal with these things, it's not that you stop having them. You're going to keep having challenges. Mental wellness is a journey. You're going to keep having some different seasons in life that there's an evolution. What you do is you get better at how you hold it.
Absolutely.
You get better at how you hold your emotions, how you hold what you're feeling, and where you are. You got 2 minutes with somebody, and they're saying, tell me, how do I hold it? What's that one thing you want to tell them about what it's going to mean to hold it just a little bit better, or working to get better?
When you say hold it,
yeah, how you're holding your emotions such that I'm holding it to recognize I don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have it all together. You don't have to present yourself as though you're perfect. That's too much to carry for one person. There's only one perfect person, and that's Christ. So for us, just be authentically you, love yourself wholeheartedly, who you are, but never satisfied with where you are.
That part.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's key to remember. I would offer that any struggles that individuals may be going through is never beyond God's redemptive power. God's redemptive power will always be there. It's okay for you to grieve and at the same time have faith. Don't lose your faith or your trust in God even through your grieving process, because grief and faith in God can coexist. I would offer that.
I think this is going to be a little it is what it is. You said how to hold it, and I think the best way to hold it is to let it go. You want to hold on to your emotions, and you let the situation go and hold on to yourself, because it's not a part of who you are. It's an experience that you're having. And my father used to say something, and it just rings true, that everything is temporary. Everything has an expiration date. And just like the thing you're going through now is catching you in the throat, the thing you went through 20 years ago felt the same way, but it passed. It was over at some point. So let it go. Hold on to yourself, but let that thing, go. Because in the cut, you can stand and watch God work it out. And then when the storm passes and the tornado has torn everything up, he'll bring you out of the corner and you'll step over the stuff, and you'll be a part of the rebuilding process, that what he's going to put together again. Let it go. It sounds so cliche, let go and let God, but that's some real stuff. That's the truth.
Yeah. Well, this has been amazing. I want to, just as we get very close, to lean into somebody who may have just kind of entered into this conversation. It grabs you and you're stuck, but you're in a season where you're struggling. And maybe you're sitting in your living room, in your car, in your office, and you're crying. The tears are falling from your face. Here's what I want to tell you. God sees you. God loves you. None of what you're experiencing has escaped God. God sees everything that you're going through, but he also sees where you're going. Amen. And what you're working to. I promise you, hold on to God's unchanging hand. And I don't want to simplify it, oversimplify it, but I want to tell you, God loves you so deeply that he's going to gather you and grow you through whatever season you might be experiencing. Man. Thank y'all so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having us.
One last thing.